All right. Nice to meet you guys. I'm ready to go.
Yes, here we are, everybody. Welcome to the Gio and Joey Show. We have a wonderful guest. Many of you know her on X as the based mother. I kept thinking it was the based mom, but it's the based mother. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Joey, how you doing?
Better than I deserve.
Hey, man, brother. Hey, tell the audience how we made this connection and where we're going before we go further on in the interview.
Yeah, no. So I think she reached out. She showed us this documentary, and then as soon as I watched it the same night. I think Gio messaged me. I watched it. And I'm like, dude, you got to watch this. We got to do this interview because it's really good. Um, and I think it's about the kind of issue, right? Like right now we're in election season, right? There's tons of contentious issues, but like this is the kind of issue that literally should unite everybody. And obviously, we'll get into this, right? Some of the disparate groups that you ended up having that you wouldn't think would be on the same page, but they are, right? Because, like, at the end of the day, when it comes to the innocence of children, like, you don't have to be a religious conservative, you shouldn't have to be a religious conservative to be like, hey, let's protect kids, right? And so I don't know. That's what once we saw the documentary, we're like, oh, we got to do this interview because it's an important
Okay.
conversation.
Awesome.
Yes, let's watch the trailer because I think the trailer itself is very compelling, and then we'll dive right into it.
Are you guys familiar with either of these books?
This is in school?
I don't think it will be shown in a school. I don't think it's a part of education.
Up until about 5 minutes ago, I was just your average American mother. Then Sunny put me on YouTube and we started speaking our minds.
Have you heard of the based mother?
What started out as fun has turned into a mission I never saw coming. One to protect America's children from being sexualized by our school system.
What would you think of a teacher that wanted to talk about this with his or her students?
They should be jailed.
The teachers are not responsible for teaching my great-grandchildren how to stick it up somebody's ass.
Well, if you or I gave it to kids in school, parents would have us locked up. It's literally sexual abuse of children.
I think that's what makes books like these really important and in a lot of ways beautiful toward the human experience because they tell us what it's like to be someone else.
You won't hear this on the mainstream media, but these really important books are loaded with filth that isn't fit for children.
This gotta get out. I love all kind of people, all genders, but this is wrong for a child to see that right now.
I showed these books on YouTube and got banned for it, but that's all right. I brought it to people the Gen X way, face to face.
Showing a child pornography and forcing a child to have sexual conversations. That is in the definition of sexual abuse.
While I was out there, I found out it was even worse than I imagined.
I can get arrested for showing it to a kid in the mall, but if I cross the threshold into a school, it's okay to show it to them there.
Right.
Oh my God.
There's no reason for that to be given to kids.
Now that you've gotten a glimpse into these books, will you be adding these to your homeschool curriculum?
Absolutely not.
I feel like it's better that they learn it in school.
That is powerful. So tell me, how did you get involved? Because many people don't want this in their schools or at home, but they don't do anything about it. What made you so passionate to get involved and do something about it?
Whether, like you said earlier, there are so many issues that we as Americans are facing right now, from sexualization of children to immigration problems to, inflation, the economy, crime, war. I mean, we're all sitting around the kitchen table screaming about this stuff to our friends and our family. And I wanted to do something more than that, more, but it's overwhelming. So I felt this issue just kept coming at me, and I kept seeing things that on the media that were talking about book bans and everybody, and so I started to look at those books, and I realized that the media was lying about them. They're making them sound like it's all about love and inclusion and just letting everybody's just be themselves, and there's levels of like filth in those books that I, as a middle-aged woman, don't need to even know exist. Never mind a child. who doesn't understand boundaries and what's good and bad for them. And I was sitting around the kitchen table this past summer with a bunch of family members, telling them about what I was learning, and almost more than half of the people at the table just like rolled their eyes and were like, "Whatever, Elena." Like I was just spouting some right-wing conspiracy stuff, and I realized that it was just too deep. People don't know; they believe the media, and they had to know the truth. So that's why I did this. I'm not a documentarian. I've never made a film before.
How the quality of the film is very good. So give me a little bit of the background on that, like because you said you're not a documentary, but it came out very good.
Thank you. I've been a writer in various capacities since I was a kid, so I had that going for me. And my son has a YouTube channel, and his editor, I told him about the project, and he just got passionate about it, and he believes in it, and he thinks children should be protected, which, as you said, should not be controversial. I mean, how did we get to this place where this is an issue? And so he came on. So he did a lot of the filming and, the on-site interviews. But I literally watched, say, like a dozen Tucker Carlson interviews, and just and took notes on how he asked questions, because I had never gone and interviewed anybody before, and I was interviewing the president of Gays Against Groomers and Terry Schilling of the American Principles Project, who's on the news on almost a daily basis, so he's used to professionals. So I just taught myself how to do it. I studied documentaries. I studied storytelling. I did the research, and I was just determined to tell a true, good story. And I left out 90% of what I learned, because otherwise it would have been 10 hours long.
You'll have to do the sequel.
Yes, that's a good point, Joey. How how has your attitude not attitude. How have you changed through this? Because look, and the reason I say, because I'm a minister, my wife's a doctor. You see certain things or people share certain things with me, and you have to protect yourself from being hardened in a way that it becomes callous to anything around you. How has making this documentary changed you personally?
So the interview you saw in the trailer about homeschooling, that is my pastor and his wife from Boston, and they are homeschoolers. And after they were the very first interview I did, and afterwards I said, how'd I do? Because I know them well. And he said, he goes, you were pretty good. You asked good questions, but when you were talking about the material, you seemed really uncomfortable, like your voice was cracking. The very next day we were in New York, and I was doing street interviews, talking to people, just walking up to people and showing them these vulgar images. And by the end of the day, it was like second nature. And I realized, I was just getting used, I was being groomed to be used to talking about these things with strangers. And if I can be groomed, how easily a child can be groomed. But for me, I mean, I am a prayer. I pray for strength every day. And I just pray,
Amen.
for protection from the dark side of this, because I do get some hate messages, and constant barrage of insults on social media. And when you have God and you have prayer, like those things, I either have two reactions. I either brush it off and don't care, or when I'm being a very good person, I will say a quick prayer for the person who said something mean to me.
That is awesome, and I teach people that. Look, if you can't pray for your enemies, then there's something deeper going on in your heart. What have been some of the positive comments you have received? Because look, I know the negative comments are going to come in. I want to ask certain questions about that. But what has been some of the reactions you have seen about this movie that have been positive and makes you know it's been worthwhile doing it?
Well, the most positive thing is, wow, I didn't know that was happening in my state. I thought that we were immune to it. I didn't know that it was legal to show pornography in my state, and now I want to do something about it. That's really positive. The fact that people just had no idea. how deep and how broad this problem is, and they are grateful to me for doing this. I have a friend in South Carolina who is bringing it to her legislators
Good.
because they're trying to eliminate the obscenity exemptions to make it illegal to show pornography. So she wants them to use it as a tool in their fight against this. And anybody that wants to use it, I made it free to watch for that reason. I want every parent in America to see it. So, yeah, just, it has been more, by far, I've received more encouragement and positivity than negativity.
I wanted to jump in here real quick. So one thing that I really like that we said is you're talking about obscenity, and there's been an idea on the right over the last 20, 30 years, right, that free speech means all sorts of things that it never meant originally, right? Until like the late 90s, right? Pornography was never included in free speech. And I think understanding that difference that you're bringing, I really like to bring that up. So it's like, we got to not be hobbled by this, right? There's a difference between the former president being kicked off Twitter for his political speech and what you and what so many parents are doing, just saying, hey, don't show our kids porn, right? There's a big difference. But then that's the thing that I always get when I talk about this. Somebody in left will be like, oh, but what about free speech? What about free speech? I'm like, no, like that's not free speech. We know the difference.
There
I
are
forget who
limits
it
to
was. It
free
was
speech.
one of the jurists, I forget who it was on the Supreme Court, said, I can't define obscenity, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. It's like, all rational people,
Yes.
we know the difference between your ideas, which should be protected. Listen, I don't like communists. They can speak. But, there's a difference. There's a distinction between pornography and speech.
How do you draw that distinction?
Well, what the courts also said was that obscenity is defined by the community. Each community in America has a right to kind of decide what is too obscene, but that is specifically for the adults in that community. So anything that involves, nudity, lewd behavior, overtly sexual behavior is off limits to children. And every state has criminal laws on the books that show that if you show a child pornography, you'll go to jail. You'll be criminally prosecuted. And these exemptions have now been put into place in for originally 44, and now it's, thank goodness, down to 39 states where you get a get out of jail free card if you show it to a kid in a school or a library, and it's okay there. And it doesn't make any sense, because if it's harmful to children on one side of the threshold, it is harmful to them on the other side of the threshold.
Tell us a little bit more about those laws, because to be frank, I didn't learn about them until I saw your documentary. I had always wondered, how could they get away with showing this? How did you mention in the documentary how these laws got started? Where are they now, and what can be done? Myself, Joey, I live in Texas, he's in Michigan. What can we do to help repeal those kind of laws?
Okay, so it started. So back in the late, I'll give you the abridged version. In the late 40s, Alfred Kinsey started doing sexual experiments on children, and in his mind, he decided that children were sexual from birth. The Rockefeller Foundation, yes, the Rockefellers you're thinking of, Rockefeller Center, the Radio City Music Hall Rockettes, those people, they have a foundation. They funded Kinsey. And once he finished his research, they then created a legal guild of lawyers and lobbyists who created a model penal code, which would create an exemption for showing pornography to children, because they believed that children were sexual from birth and should be treated as such. So in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, they went around the country and convinced 44 states that this was okay to put these exemptions on the books. Now, fast forward to today, and it's gotten so extreme and so obscene what's in the schools that 5 states recently, in the past few years, repealed the exemptions. And so now we only have 11 what you would call safe states, but that's only safe from a criminal standpoint. If you look into each of those states, the books that are being questioned, and the materials are still in all of those states.
How did we,
Yeah.
yeah, how do we get, because I'm pretty sure the books you shared with those people in New York City weren't there in the 40s and 50s. How
Correct.
did it creep up to, because look, I know the people in the 40s and 50s would have never put up with those kind of books people are tolerating now. What was a casual creep up, if you're aware of that history? What did they start with?
A little, yeah, I can give you a little structure on it. So, for example, Mary Calderon was one of Alfred Kinsey's disciples. So she again believes children are sexual from birth. She was the director at Planned Parenthood. She left and got some money from Hugh Hefner, and he helped her found SICUS, which is the Sexual Information and Education Council of the United States. Now, SICUS is the most powerful sex ed organization in America, and they have materials in every school, every public school in America. So my guess on what they did is they had to be gradual. You couldn't come out to the masses and just put this hardcore stuff in there. You had to make slow cultural shifts. So they did it in various ways we can see it. The sexual revolution, eventually, feminism, separating women from their families, putting them into the workforce, and then ultimately telling women, oh, you can also sleep around the way men, the way men do, and not feel it, not have any emotional attachment, and creating what we now have. You can see in the past 5-10 years, we've been talking about sex positivity, which tells kids that children that they deserve to have a healthy sex life, and they should be able to do whatever they want, and they are sexual beings, and this is and they're putting sex at the center of a person's identity instead of their character, their morals, the work that they bring to the world, their purpose, their values. So can you see how that happened, even say from the 60s, the sexual revolution, until now? And now they have it where they are telling kids that, STDs aren't even a big deal. And I think a lot of it is about money, because if you break down the family, you have more people paying taxes into the world, and also the medical complex makes a fortune on abortion and STDs, and this is big money. And now they've added gender transition treatments to kids, which is already a multi-billion-dollar industry every year.
And there you go, baby. The root of all evil is the love of money. It always comes back to that, doesn't it, right? And that's why God says you can't serve God or mammon. It's always money. It's sad. It's sad. Joey, jump in here.
Yeah, so I think there's another underreported part of it too. Two parts. One, when you look at all the stuff, whether it's the body positivity movement or it's kids getting screens at younger and younger ages, all these things, what do they seek to do? Well, they make people dumber. They make people more compliant, right? More likely to go along if there's a public health emergency, whatever. Like, they're more likely to listen to what they're told, right? So if you're a person who's in control of your your appetites, right, your sexual desires, you're a freer person, right? That's what our founders would have called true liberty, right? But instead, they know if they can get the kids when they're young, they're going to reject and rebel against that. But the other part of it, and I think this is changing with stuff like your video, stuff with the parents you've been seeing going to school boards, is I think for a long time, parents just didn't know the extent of what was going on in schools, and weren't, like, they kind of just trusted. They're like, listen, the school system is there for a reason. We drop our kids off, right? They educate them. That's what our parents did. Like, it's fine. And I think that was part of the mistake too, is trusting that authority. And I think COVID, when the schools got thrown online, and the parents now could see the curriculum, they could hear the things being said. I think it woke people up. And so what I like about what you're doing and what so many others are doing is just keeping that fire. Because sometimes it's easy for somebody to make a big deal about something for a while and then kind of let up pressure, which I think would be the worst mistake. I think, if anything, what parents should have seen, and what just any sane people should see, is like, we've got to keep the pressure on. We can't make a scene for a couple of years and then back off. But like, we got to put this pressure on the public schools. We got to put this pressure on our lawmakers to actually change it, rather than just notice it.
Well,
How do we do that? Sorry. How do we do that
yeah,
practically? Yeah.
I got to be honest. I don't see a soft, civilized, easy path. I think people are going to have to make some real sacrifices because it's not just that psychus that I was talking about. So the American Library Association is in every state and every school. They are pushing this. They're not even pretending that they aren't pushing it. They are actively advocating for this kind of stuff for children. The teachers' unions are also actively advocating it. So teachers are between a rock and a hard place, even if they are like us and they think children should be protected and their innocence should be shielded. They will lose their jobs and their pensions if they fight back. So and those organizations that I mentioned are so well funded and so powerful that the only way to really make change, in my opinion, yes, go to school board meetings, call them out, put them in spotlight, pull your kids, get them out. Make it, if it's going to be a financial sacrifice for a lot of people where, some second income, if you're a family with two incomes, you're blessed enough to have that, you're going to have to go down to one income and save your children. Because the only way for the system to really get rapid change is for it to fall apart and for them to hear the people and say, we're not giving you our children anymore until you fix this. And that's why you hear like Randy Weingarten from the American Federation of Teachers railing against homeschool, because homeschool's growing. Every year it's going up and up, and like something like I think it's 11% of kids are homeschooled now, and she just goes off on it, even though the results are better, like by far, on standardized tests and college admissions and everything. So they're getting scared because parents like me are telling other parents what's going on and telling them you can do it, you can homeschool your kids. It's going to be a sacrifice, but if we don't start making sacrifices to save our children and save our country, who is? The powers that are in charge are here to destroy us.
And I agree with you. And for those listening or will listen in the future, my wife made a huge sacrifice, and it was one that we planned because she's a board certified doctor of internal medicine. But we knew the moment we had agreed upon this, even before we got married, the moment we had kids, we were going to find a way to keep her at home without losing her medical license. So we started our own business. We both work from home. We both help with the homeschooling because we saw in our respective fields the markers coming a long way that you can't trust school because no one's going to care for your children as much as you are. Even if they're good people, right? When their financial well-being's on the line, like you said, the pressure from the unions, the pressure of having a two-income home, that applies a lot of pressure on people. But we have to raise a society where we do the right thing for the right reasons, not just for benefits. I wanted to ask you about the older people you interviewed. I'm pretty sure not everything that was filmed made the cut of the documentary, but what was some of the, I guess, surprise? Because you could see it in their faces. Tell me a little bit more about their reactions, because they didn't have this during their school days, that's for sure.
Right. So that was my mother and a lot of her friends who they live in a retirement community here in Florida. And I didn't tell them what the topic was. And when I said to them, let's go back in time and tell me about what school was like for you, they were excited to tell me about geography class and, math. And when we got to the sex ed part, they explained that health class was very basic. It was, here's what's going to happen to your body. Here's how a man and a woman, how a woman can get, pregnant. And I don't even know if they used that word at the time. I think it was might have still been a dirty word. And it was just very simple, and just birds and the bees. And that was enough. And it didn't talk about preferences, kinky behaviors, sex toys. Like when I showed them, I had them in the book. It is one of the more entertaining parts of the movie when they're reading from these books, and they were a mixture of shock, and they started like nervous laughter because they couldn't believe these words had never come out of their mouths before. And the thought and one of them got a little bit angry, said, is this really in schools? How is this possible? And
Yeah.
some of the outtakes, one of them, her kids are all teachers actually. And, she kind of got upset. She goes, this is going to make teachers look bad. And, my answer to that is I'm not trying to make teachers look bad. I'm trying to give the good teachers a tool that they can use to fight back. And because they need to fight back.
Was that teacher sympathetic or just looking to protect her own?
That was a woman who her grown children are teachers. So, she was just feeling like I was doing something to her to make teachers look bad, and it's like, well, no, it's not really what I'm trying to do. But if that happens in the process, then that'll be good because then teachers will hopefully stand up for themselves and say, you know what? Yeah, we're not for this.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funny, a friend of mine who is a teacher in Tennessee, she had mentioned this years ago, but with no concrete proof at the time. Teachers were being given directives to, be accepting of all kinds of people. And it seems so far-fetched, yet now it's right in our face. What got me the most is the graphic nature of the books. Because words, a kid wouldn't be able to picture even graphic content, right? If it's just word. But the pictures, I know you probably couldn't show, or probably didn't for editorial reasons. How graphic are these books? I know some of them were very graphic, but is it page after page after page?
Yeah,
Paint the
absolutely.
picture.
It wasn't like, one page in one of these books. There were a lot of pages in all of these books that create scenarios, words, and just because they're done in a cartoonish manner does not make them G-rated or even PG or PG-13. These are R and X-rated images that are in these books. It was like I said, it was embarrassing at first to show them to people. But then after a while, I felt empowered, and I really feel like I have to shine light on this. This is some kind of evil to do this to kids. There's in the book Genderqueer, there is so many graphic images and scenarios that are strictly for adults. And then in it, there's a reference to the website kink.com. Now,
yes, I
kink.com
remember you
is
said
a
that. Yeah.
violent, hardcore S&M website. Why would a child need to even know that this exists? They don't. Nobody needs to know it exists. If you're into that, go ahead, go do your thing, but keep it away from the children. That's fine.
It's funny you mentioned that because I remember you mentioning that, and I thought about, well, let me do due diligence and verify that she's saying the truth on it. And I said, you know what? That documentary is too good. I'm not even going to put that on my browser. You know what I mean? If somebody would check my computer, I was like, yeah, I'll pass. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
on mine.
well, I mean, I mean, you did the work.
Yeah.
Tell me about your relationship. How'd you get in connection with Gays Against Groomers? Because the first time I heard of them, I saw them on X, formerly known as Twitter. How'd you make the connection there? And what'd you think of their support for your film?
They were fantastic. I reached out to them. Oh gosh, I can't remember if it was by email or on Twitter, asking them. I think it was on email, asking them if they'd be interested. And I told them the basis of the documentary, and I said, "Would you be interested in talking with me about this?" And they said yes. And first they were a little bit, because they get a lot of hate. They were a little apprehensive, and they said, "Could we jump on a Zoom and talk about it?" They wanted to meet me face to face that way and just make sure I wasn't, some kind of a nut who was going to give them a hard time. And we hit it off right away. They are wonderful people, and they agreed to work with me on the film because they've had a hand in 19 states banning transgender surgeries for children and transgender treatments. They are in state houses testifying. They are outside of state houses protesting and educating people. I mean, these people are so devoted to this cause that I'm so in awe of how fast they've grown that organization. And we're still in touch, and they're still helping me here and there promote the film, and we're going to be doing more stuff together. They're wonderful, and I really admire that they're willing to say, like, this isn't us. This isn't what we wanted. Don't hate us. Don't hate all of us, because we just wanted the right to get married and have the same legal opportunities as everyone else in America. And we got that, and we were done. And it's true, because this is hurting the gay community, because approval of the gay community is plummeting. And it's really not their fault, all of them. It's the ones that are pushing, that have glommed onto this, pushing this agenda on kids. I mean, why do kindergartners need a book about who they're attracted to? That's insanity.
And not only
Yeah.
that, go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say, one thing that I appreciated about the film is that you had them in there, because, like, listen, Gio and I, we're conservative Christians, right? We have certain views about biblical sexuality and all those things, and we're not going to shy away from that. We'll talk about that. But one of the things I appreciated about, for the purpose of this film, and this was what I was alluding to before, listen, in our political society, we're going to have all kinds of people, right? Like, there are certain strains who think that, we can mandate a certain kind of life. We can't do it, right? Like, as Christians, we can preach
Or we
something.
wouldn't want to.
Yeah, exactly. But politically, right, we're going to have to live together. And adults who disagree on things, right, we should, right, for most of our history, we could all agree, listen, children are one thing, adults are a different thing. There are certain things that maybe Gio and I don't agree with. But guess what? An adult can do like, I don't have to agree with it, and they don't have to agree with my opinion.
Yeah.
But we can, as long as we can function in a society, as long as we can agree that there's a distinction between children and adults. And I liked that you had the Gays Against Groomer there, because it proves that this is an issue that doesn't have to be partisan. It's become partisan, but I wish our friends on the left could take some cues from that group.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's, well, go ahead. You're our guest.
No,
Go ahead.
please. No, thanks.
Okay.
I have a friend who's very liberal, and she watched it and she said, "I'm so glad you had Gays Against Groomers in there." I think I hadn't intended it that way, but it gave me a smidge of credibility with her, because I am, outward conservative Christian, and, I don't need the Bible to tell me to protect children. That's like, yes, I have the strength for this fight because of the Bible, but that has nothing to do with protecting children. And it did help to open more doors and more eyes, and have people consider something differently because they're in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, and no doubt. And I think it was a good move because, as Joey was alluding to, when we can agree on things, then let's work together. Let's work together to protect the children, because in the bottom line, they are the innocent ones. Something that was also the film made me think about is the rising uh, proclivity to MAPS, right? Minor attracted persons. What have you been hearing the more you are diving into this? What are some of the pushes? Sometimes we need to know what the enemy's doing so we can combat it. What are some of the issues that are going along with that?
That issue is so deep that I wouldn't say I'm even well versed on it, because it is ever changing. I do know that I can see where it's going, that when you take children and you make them comfortable with or used to hearing about sex, that with adults and about adults and preferences and kink, that you're just what you're doing is opening the door for pedophiles or minor attracted persons, which is just absurd, a glossing over of what's really happening here. So you're taking a kid and you're making them, you're breaking down their barriers. And even if their instincts are going off and saying, this isn't right, when an adult inappropriately touches them or has a conversation with them, they're gonna just freeze up, and they're not even going to push back, because they are also being told that, this is right, and you should be, you should be experimenting in this area. And it's really sad, the grooming that's going on. So I think I see coming down from the White House things like the Equality Act, which would allow for, anybody, no matter how they identify, to, a man in a dress can go into a women's locker room, dressing room, or bathroom. And, so now again, if you make children used to adult nudity and being very close with naked people, when the man walks into a girl's locker room at a pool house, what happens there? They won't even say anything because they've been told you have to be nice, you have to be polite. And you know what? Children were always taught you don't have to be polite to someone that's trying to hurt you.
Yes.
That's when you scream, stranger danger. And now it's shut up and be polite because that naked man belongs there with you. And that's coming from the White House. So I don't know what's going on the underground, but I see all these things, and the picture is forming.
So how do we educate our children? Like, imagine you're talking right now to the homeschool parent. How do you advise them? Because even though they're homeschool parents, they have kids, right? Sometimes they have play dates with kids. Sometimes they visit other kids' parents' houses. What should a parent be looking for that may give them a hint that their kids are being exposed to something they don't want them to be exposed to?
That's a really tough question because you have television, you have social media, you have other kids. If you're homeschooling and you're spending 8 hours a day awake with your children, you are eons ahead of everyone else. I would say I would very much limit children's screen time alone. And I really don't I think we have to start a movement of not giving children smartphones. If your children are going to be separated from you and they need you want them to have a phone to call you, give them a flip phone. Yeah, a watch, a flip phone. I mean, whatever it takes. Give them a long-range walkie-talkie. I don't care. We have to get these smartphones out of the hands of children because a lot of these people that are pushing these ideas, they look really innocent, on these innocent apps. TikTok, you might see your kid looking at cat videos, but then the predator pops up. And I showed some of them in the film. So you have to keep that. And I think if you're homeschooling, you have a better shot. I would hope that you have better and more communication with your kid. I think the people that really need to hear a message is the people that are sending their kids to school every day. And what I say is you wouldn't let your kids sit in a vat of poison all day long and then give them a bath and say that they're okay. Because it seeps in, and that's what happens. Your kid goes and gets indoctrinated for 8 hours a day in school and comes home and you say, I don't buy any of that. That's nonsense. You don't have a shot against 8 hours with a quick conversation. So you have to get ahead of it. Tell your kids, here's what's going on out in the world and here's why it's wrong. And just be honest. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm straight shooter.
Sometimes you don't need to be an expert to speak from the heart, right? When you're living it in the sense of, what would you say are the most dangerous social media? Because look, I'm on X and I hear that there's a lot of bad things on X, but I don't see it. And I guess because I'm not looking for it. But I'm pretty sure it's there. Which are some of the ones that parents should be more leery of?
What I hear out there is TikTok, Snapchat, that there's underworlds there. But we just learned this week that Meta knew that children were being exposed to adult nudity on Instagram and Facebook for years, and they did nothing about it. So there is no safe social media. And then there are apps that the three of us, have never heard of because compared to the kids, we're old fogies, and they have things for years before we even hear about them. And I don't know any parent that has the time or the desire to go through their child's phone and look at the history of everything they clicked. So the safest way is to just not have it there, or have it, give your child access to the internet in limited spurts so that you have more control over the person that your child is growing into.
Yeah, and look, I'm not talking about children stuff, but I remember going to a religious school before I was converted, and then going back to the same religious school after I was converted, and I found two different crowds. So it does matter, right? What you teach your children to look for. And I agree with your comment, the flip phone. I told my girls they're not getting a smartphone till they leave the house. If they want something to communicate, they're getting a smart watch, right? Because they can call me, they can text me. I can see where they are by tracking them. They're not getting a smartphone. That's nuts. Joey wants to get rid of smartphones, right, Joey?
Well, for other reasons, but one of the things that I don't think, because most kids do have screens, right? Like the average toddler can't even, like, when they get a magazine, they start taking their finger, and I don't think parents realize the level to which I don't think most parents are bad people, right? They don't want to expose their kid to things, but they just don't realize the level to which these things are being used. Listen, I'm going to go Christianese here, but by the enemy of souls, right? Like when I see this level of darkness, when I watch your film, it's not just ordinary evil, because like we were saying before, generally speaking, reasonable people should be able to agree on this. And when we can't agree on the innocence of children, there's something else going on, right? We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. But on your comments on the phone and on the screens, I have yet to see one good argument of the rewards outweighing the risks for kids having devices, and yet so many parents still do it. So it's like, I've heard Matt Walsh say, we need to have a ban on. I don't know how that would work, but it's like, how do you get through to parents and to people who do love their kids, like, that this stuff is dangerous, that their kids shouldn't have it, because it hasn't been that successful when I've had those
No.
conversations.
No, they don't. And they just say, "Oh yeah, well, you try to take it away from them." Well, here in Florida, they just instituted a new law where there's no phones all day at school. You're not allowed to have your phone. And so
Okay.
apparently it's already yielding results where teachers feel like the kids are more engaged and they're happier and they're interacting with each other more. And so they're kind of like pushing the time machine back, which is fantastic. Again, it's just like I said earlier, like we got to feel some pain if we want to make a real change in this
Yes.
country. And the parents are just going to have to get over it. Oh, your kid is mad at you. Oh, welcome to
Boo-hoo.
reality. Yeah, that's life. You're not always going to be their favorite person when you start building boundaries. And we have to not let toddlers be babysat by devices, because even Muppet babies, you saw the Muppet babies when they turned Gonzo into Gonzarella a year or so ago.
Oh, wow. I didn't
So
even know that.
yes, baby toddler cartoons are teaching them about, they may be in the wrong body. So like, let's just rip it away from them. Our children are being poisoned, and I can't say it enough. And I sound like a crazy person, because
No, you don't.
I was, raised in the 80s and pop culture was fun. And it didn't hurt us, and now I'm like, get your kids out of school, take away their devices. We're in a battle of evil versus good. And I just have seen the truth, and I can't
You
just say it enough.
you mentioned you were raised in the 80s, so was I. You remember when Madonna's Like a Prayer, the video was such a scandal?
Big
And
scandal.
now, and now a couple of years ago, you had WAP. Like it makes Madonna's Like a Prayer video tame compared to this. Where
Compared to,
can,
yeah.
yeah, you had mentioned YouTube kind of banned you or stuff, or at least the documentary. Where's the main place people can watch your documentary? I know I could see it on your AmericanGroomerFilm.com. Is there
Yeah.
any other places, or is that the main place?
Yep, no, that's the main place. Go to AmericanGroomerFilm.com, and it's right there. When you get there, it's free to watch. And I'm going to be adding more to the website, more about
Okay.
the obscenity exemptions statutes,
Mm-hmm.
and more press appearances as they come up, because people are doing a great job of helping me spread the word. But it is up to the people that watch it to share it with their friends and their family. And if I could have it my way, I would have people having little watch parties in their house with fellow parents and saying, hey, let's get together and make sure this isn't happening in our schools. Because I realize it's not realistic for everyone to pull their kids out of school. There are a lot of single parent households in this country, but parents can put aside their own habits, hobbies, desires to spend more time fighting for their children. We have to. We've been asleep at the wheel for far too long in America as citizens. And you can't just go to the voting booth once a year and think you're doing your part. It's gotten really bad, and we got to step in, which is how I got here.
Amen. Amen. Tell the people where they can find you. I know you have a Twitter handle. You're on TikTok and Instagram. Let them know your handle and where they can find you. If they need to contact you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, so you can find me at The Based Mother on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. And on the website, there's contact information there also on AmericanGroomerFilm.com.
Okay. And now you got to tell me how'd you came up with that wonderful name, The Based Mother.
Okay, so my son had me do some reaction videos on YouTube about a year and a half ago. I had never planned on being on camera ever. And we did some reaction videos to Andrew Tate, who had been accused of sex trafficking and all this stuff that there was never any evidence for. And I defended him a little bit. So Andrew Tate caught wind of our video, and he said, wow, this woman is speaking facts. Have you heard of The Based Mother? And that's how I got the nickname from Andrew Tate.
Oh,
So,
wow. Also, it was
I've never
after
met.
him. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was after him that you decided, hey, that's catchy. Cool. Some insight here. I didn't know that. What's
Yeah.
your next step? Will there be a part two, or what's in the future as you fight this battle?
I hope there's no part two. I hope we can solve this problem in the next year. So my plan is to, people have asked me, are you going to start a foundation, to start an organization? And I don't think that is what I'm called to do. I think I am the person who's putting the facts together, telling the truth, and getting it out there. So what I'm doing is I'm starting to talk to organizations that are doing the work, and I'm getting more involved in their efforts. And I'm saying, you can bring me to speak. I will testify at any state house. I will come in and speak at any event. I will share my film and make it accessible to everybody so they can use it. So right now I'm just on the awareness mission to just
Okay.
get the word out. So I'm coming on shows like this, and that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm just a lone ranger out here. I'm not part of any organization, and I think it's the right move right now. I pray about it, and I just see the way the path is unfolding, and that's, I'm trusting that I'm on the in the right place right now.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm in several Bible studies. I'm going to share with them Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and I'm also a minister, so I'm going to put the link to the film in my church's newsletter and have the congregation look at it. Those who want to watch it, because I have three daughters, 8, 5, and 2. And my wife and I see what's coming, and we homeschool. We can do that, but like you said, there are single parent households that can't do that, or people who just can't afford to do that, and we want to be able to help however can. Joey, give us some words, and then we'll have our guests say the last words.
Yeah, so no, just as you were speaking there, I was just thinking of a sermon I recently heard, right? So some people, when they think of prophecy, they think of a prophet as someone who has visions and whatever. But that's actually not it. There's another prophetic role, which just telling the truth as it is in scripture, right? Telling the truth and proclaiming it loudly. And the church, right, and Christians and people of faith, we have an obligation to do that. So what you're doing, you're not
It's
finding an
prophetic,
organization. You're getting the mission out there. That is a prophetic work. And so, we'll definitely be praying for you as you continue doing it. And one thing I wanted to say to our audience out there, like leave them on like an action call, is yes, like you should listen to everything you're saying. You should get your kids out of the school. But here's the thing. We all still pay, whether we send our kids to public schools or not, we still pay taxes. And so we actually, in your local public school, you have
Don't
a
remind
right
me.
to show up to every school board meeting, and they can't turn you away. And if they do, you can make a stink about it. You have a right to make your voice heard, even if you have no kids there. You have a right to vote in those school board elections. These things matter, right? Right now we're in election season. Everybody's focused on the top, but these school board elections, right? These things matter way, way more, in my opinion. And so, know who's running for your school board. If nobody good is, run yourself. Like, I'm just saying that to our audience out there. Like, do something, right? You can watch this video and then you can and go away and do nothing, or you can watch it, be inspired, and go out and do your own part. And many hands make light work.
Amen. Amen.
That's awesome.
What?
Thank you.
Give us a final closing thought. What would you like the audience to do?
I would like the audience to watch the film and share it with other parents and grandparents and share it with teachers. And then I'd like them to get out into their school board meetings and start asking all the hard questions. What's going on in our schools? Tell us what books you have in the libraries and tell us what's happening. And if they push back, and quite frankly, that's a little bit suspicious. You know, they're going to say, we don't want to be watched that heavily. Well, unfortunately, this is where bad things are happening to our children all around the country. And it's time for us to put some feet to the fire.
Yep, it's time to stand up, America. Elena, sorry, my Spanish accent came out there. Elena, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the video. And once again, all those who want to watch it, AmericanGroomerFilm.com. It's in the show notes. And visit it, watch it, share it. You can follow her on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all under the Based Mother. Cool name. Thank you very much, and God bless.
God bless. Thank you.
Have a great evening.